Hi everyone, and welcome to ISI 794. This is an orientation lecture for the internship experience, and it's important that everybody watches, even if this is your second semester in internship. These things will all be really familiar to you, but I think it's a good idea to go over them once again. I haven't changed many things in here, but there's a few minor differences. Okay, I want to talk about course requirements and expectations for ISI 794. I want you to know what's going to be expected of you this semester, both in internship and the portfolio, which you'll complete as part of this course. And I'm going to share with you resources that are available in Blackboard and give you a little bit of a tour there because this course is largely self-paced. It's going to look a little bit different than some of your others, so I want to point a few things out. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jenna Spearing. You've likely had me before, probably for young adult materials or potentially something else like children's materials. I am an associate professor here in the I School, but I'm also the coordinator of the school library program. So I am sort of overseeing the students that are in the program to get school library certification, both in South Carolina and elsewhere. You should have my email, but I also want to give you my phone number. You're welcome to text me. I don't want anything to get in the way of you getting answers that you need while you're on site at internships. So I've provided my phone number. If it's not an urgent question or if it's going to take me more than a couple of sentences to answer it, I recommend sending an email. But you should feel free to use my phone number if it seems like something you need a quick answer to. That's a good way to get a hold of me. For emails, please do allow me 24 hours for responses on the weekdays and 48 hours on the weekends. I don't respond to emails on the weekend typically unless they're urgent, so I'll often flag those for Monday, but I will try to get back to you pretty quickly during the work week, and I expect the same kind of communication from you. If I email you, I want you to respond to me during the work week, or I'll give you a couple days on the weekend. It's also really important that you only communicate with me using your USC email account and that you check it frequently. I know that many of you are working in school districts and you are working, with your school email and you might accidentally email me from that, but you should know that several school emails will get lost in our filters here at the university. And besides that, I'm only going to be using your USC email. That's the one I have on file. That's the one that's available to me through Blackboard. And if you're not checking it, you'll miss things. Announcements will go to your email. Also, towards the end of the semester, especially if you're graduating, we're going to be up against some pretty tight deadlines. So for example, when I provide you feedback on the portfolio, if you don't check that email and you don't do the revisions to the portfolio, that could impact graduation. The same with some of the requirements for internship. If you, upload a document and it's not working for me and you think you're done with this class, but I'm emailing your account to try to get you to fix something and you're not responding, that's going to impact graduation. So please, I know for a lot of you, this is your last semester, just be on your USC email until you've received a final grade. If you have any questions about this course that are for the good of the whole class, like it's a question that's, something's kind of confusing in the syllabus, or in Blackboard, stick it on our questions Blackboard discussion board forum. That way everybody will be able to see it. I'll also show you when we get into Blackboard, but if you follow that discussion board, then you'll get notifications when questions and answers are published. Okay, internship placements. Actually, this slide I always put in here because when we start the internship, there's usually a few people who don't have placements yet, but actually I am recording this lecture right before school starts on January 12th, and I actually have everybody's placements. So there's no need for anybody to panic because you will have a placement. I am sending those placements out on January 12th. So you'll hear about your placement very, very soon. And I will say there's no reason to rush into getting your internship days done. I'll talk more about that in a bit. 794 is different from other classes. It is a venue for sharing internship documents and information related to your experience. And you'll share a little bit with others about activities you do throughout the semester, but there are no class sessions for 794. However, you're just going to be engaging in some ongoing participation and discussion board forums, and then you're doing your internship individually and according to a schedule that you're going to set with your supervisor. Another big difference between this class and other classes is that the grade is pass-fail, either satisfactory or unsatisfactory. Everybody's going to pass this class if they complete all the requirements. I am going to always make sure that even if you've turned something into me that's unsatisfactory, that you have a chance to get it done. But it is a pass-fail class. There are no midterm grades. You're all on different and independent schedules, and that's really important to be aware of. Some terminology. You will hear me sort of interchangeably using internship and practicum. They're the same thing. They're different words that we've used throughout the years to talk about this experience, so they get mixed up, but they're the same thing. You are the candidates or the interns or the 794 students. Some of you are advanced certification students, and some of you are initial licensure students. Advanced certification students are those of you who have a current teaching license, you've already been teaching, and you're just adding on K-12 media certification, and you complete one internship. If you're an initial licensure student, it's because you've not been a teacher before, you don't have a teaching license, and you are seeking licensure, initial licensure. You complete 2 internships. And the reason for this is because this is a K-12 certification. So you need to do 2 internships, one at the elementary level, one at the secondary level. When I say secondary, I'm referring to middle and high school. Middle and high schools work really different than elementary school libraries. Elementary school libraries are typically on a fixed schedule, although not always. And secondary libraries, middle schools, and high schools are very, very different. So if you're an advanced certification student and you have an elementary teaching license, you're doing a practicum at a secondary school, middle or high school. If your teaching license is at the secondary level, you'll be doing it at an elementary. If you have questions about that or you feel like you've been placed in the wrong place, please do reach out to me. I'm the faculty supervisor, but then the supervising librarian is the librarian you'll be assigned to who's going to mentor you in those 5 or more days that you are in their school doing the internship. And that school is referred to as your primary school. This is where you'll be doing those 5 days. That's a placement that's been set up between the College of Ed and the iSchool and your school district where you're doing it. It's not to be confused with another school that you're going to visit on another grade level, which I'll talk more about later. Okay, you should know a little bit about the history of the internship because your supervisors might know a little bit about the history of the internship. This used to be 135 hours. It's now 120 hours, and it used to be 20 full days that you did in the school. So for those of you who are working in a school already, you can imagine that was quite difficult to get out of your building for 20 days or basically 4 weeks of a semester. Now you do 6 full days outside of your school. We had to do that because we had students who just weren't completing the program because they couldn't get permission from administration. They didn't have enough sick leave or professional leave in order to do those days, and it was just prohibitive. So what we've done is instead of 20 full days, we have created a lot of different ways for you to get internship hours, like iSchool assignments. You'll do blog interviews for this class. Those activities all require you to spend time in a different setting with a librarian, but you can do them flexibly without being out of your school for entire days. And then there are some flexibility with completing those activities beyond those days. So for example, there's ways for you to work on this course on the weekend. There's ways for you to work on it in the evening. And that just gives more people an opportunity to get those 120 hours. The course requirement is, this replaces a requirement for a textbook, is that you should be joining SCASL. A professional membership is $50. You only qualify for a student membership if you are truly only a student. If you're working as a teacher or a librarian, you are a student, but you're also a professional, and that membership will be $50. It's still a steal. It gives you access to the listserv and all these resources, and it's just a way to support the organization, but to keep you in dialogue with the other school librarians in South Carolina. Now, I know that there are a handful of you who are not in school libraries in South Carolina, or who are not in South Carolina at all. If you're in Georgia, you can join the Georgia Association for School Librarians. If you're abroad, you can pick a different association that makes sense for you. There are other options. There are even some international organizations, International Association of School Librarians, and national organizations that will honor a student membership since you're currently enrolled. So you have a few options, but you need to join a professional organization. You're also going to need the AASL Standards textbook for this course. You should already have it. It was required for 742. You use it in a lot of other courses. If you don't already have it, I've posted a code in the Blackboard site that will give you access to both the textbook and 1-year membership to AASL for $99, which is a really good deal. You should know that the standards were just updated. It was just released in October, the second edition standards, which are the ones in the lower right-hand corner. The standards are the same. They've presented them with new examples and some kind of finding aids and some little diagrams and visuals that help to understand them. The standards themselves, the shared foundations, the domains, the competencies are all the same. So you can still use the old standards textbook. If you wanted to get the new one, you could use that code to do that. Okay. Your primary site is a site that was approved and assigned by the University of South Carolina's College of Education, along with the iSchool and the school district. Over the winter break, this last few days, I have sent emails to everybody's supervisor, so they should have information telling them that they have an intern. I sent them a lot of information about how to evaluate you and our handbook and how the course is supposed to go, so they're all aware. You're going to spend a minimum of 5 days at this site. If you're able to visit more days, you should definitely do that. And that's time that will count towards your 120 hours. So for example, if you don't have another full-time job, or you're able to leave your full-time job, the more days you can spend at the internship site, the better. The supervisors always say they just wish they could spend more time. Time in the primary site, at the primary site, should only be spent on internship activities. So you're not doing 720 assignments during those 5 days. I mean, the idea here is that you need to maximize the experience that you get in those 5 days. You shouldn't be doing anything during those 5 days that you could do outside of school. That should be time for you to soak up what you can from your supervising librarian, from your interactions with students and classroom teachers. The days that you're going to do these visits are determined by you and your supervisor, but you need to do full 8-hour school days on each visit. I want to be clear that there's no benefit to getting this done right away. Trying to schedule all your dates in January and early February and just getting the internship done does not benefit you. It's not a race. You should actually be working with your supervisor to find the 5 best days to be in the school. Sometimes there are kind of weeks that are a little dull in a school library, and then there are weeks where a ton of teaching happens and a ton of programming, and those are the best days for you to be there so you can see everything that library offers. Better yet, to spend kind of 5 days throughout the semester where you're really seeing what the librarian thinks are the best things going on in that library. So think about that when you decide. Please don't go into your meeting with your supervisor with days in mind that you're planning to do. It's really a collaboration between you and the supervisor and both of your schedules. So when you are ready to make contact with your supervising librarian, these are some things to think about. Like I said, I already contacted all the supervisors to let them know who their intern is. You should be emailing your supervising librarian after you receive the placement, but only after you review all the materials. It's really important that you know what's expected of you this semester before you meet with the librarian, because there are several things that you could be doing during your internship to count for activities, and you'll want to plan that. Be respectful of the librarian's schedule. So introduce yourself, thank them for agreeing to serve as your supervising librarian, and then schedule a meeting with them. And then again, continuing to be respectful of their schedule. Don't go in and dictate the days that you think the internship are going to happen. It needs to be a collaboration between your schedule and their schedule. Like I said, before you meet with your supervisor and after you review all of the documents, you need to read through all of the assignments, the practicum activities, and the intern evaluation form. You should note all the important dates and deadlines. There are a few deadlines in this semester that you need to be aware of. And then you need to be thinking about your personal learning objectives and outcomes to discuss with your supervising librarian. These are due early in the semester after you've met. You're going to be turning in personal learning objectives and also a timeline. The idea here is not that you tell me the learning objectives for this class. I have learning objectives that are for all of you for the class. You're coming up with personal learning objectives. What do you want to get out of the internship experience? Where are your growth areas? What are things that you know you really want to learn from a librarian and work on? And then you're going to be discussing a timeline with the supervising librarian. The idea here is that you only have 5 days. We want to make the most of them. So we want you to really think about planning out the kinds of activities that you're going to observe and talk about and see while you're there to maximize your experience. The practicum dates form is due in Blackboard by February 8th. It's simply a form that tells me where you're doing your internship and the dates that you and your supervisor have decided. Life happens. These dates might change. Somebody might get sick and you need to reschedule one. You don't need to send me an updated form every time that happens. At the end of the semester on your checklist, you'll be indicating the days you actually went and did the internship, but it's really important that you plan them and turn in this date form so that I know that you have set up a plan. You'll also be turning on February 8th those personal learning objectives. After your introductory meeting with your mentor, you're going to post in Blackboard a list of 4 to 5 personal learning outcomes or objectives that you want to achieve by the end of the semester. They should be directly related to skills that you personally identify as important to practice for your professional growth. For example, I will be able to practice a variety of effective student behavior management strategies, a great objective. If you need help with these, ask your supervising librarian for suggestions about things they think that you should get out of the internship. But remember, they're not our course learning outcomes, they're individual. The timeline also gets submitted on February 8th. Again, completing this after your meeting with your supervising librarian, but it's definitely something you'll want to talk about during that meeting. This is an example from a former student. You don't have to do it exactly like she did, but I just want to show you a little bit about what it might look like and the level of detail I'm thinking about for the timeline. And again, the timeline might change, things might come up, new things, some of the things you might not get to, but it's a good way to structure the internship and make sure that you've thought about some of the experiences you're going to be a part of. One of the requirements for ISI 794 is to attend a conference or workshop, and there's a few options for this. You may count a face-to-face or virtual conference or workshop that you attended either in the summer or fall of 2025 or something that you're going to attend this spring. If you're not able to get out of school to attend a conference or there isn't one that you're able to attend, another option is to attend a virtual conference or 3 webinars. If you're a practicing teacher, please note that PD provided by your district does not count for this requirement. We're really looking for you to do some professional development outside your district that is important for school librarians and is not just like grounded only in the setting where you work. Another requirement, if you're in your first internship or if you're advanced certification only doing one internship, is to complete blog posts. This is a reflective practice that pertains to the AASL standards. I've posted directions in Blackboard, so please read through those carefully. And basically what you're doing is you're interviewing 4 different librarians. One can be your supervising librarian. Each of the 4 blog posts will be about 400 to 600 words and focus on one standard. So you'll interview one librarian about the Inquire Shared Foundation and another about the Engage Shared Foundation. And you'll want to look through your book and read about what's all under the Engage Shared Foundation. What are the competencies associated with that for the learners, for school librarians? And you'll want to ask the librarian questions about that. And then you're going to write about them in a reflective blog post. Please don't use generative AI to complete these blog posts. It's very frustrating to read, and it's very clear when you have they don't need to be perfect. They're your personal reflections and learning from a librarian in the field. So yes, that's just my new, it's a new concern for the blog post. It didn't used to be a problem to write personal reflections, but for some reason, We're letting AI do things that I know we can do. Okay, final reflection is required of everybody in the class. After the last day at the primary site internship, students will submit to me a summary of 3 to 4 highlighted experience that include reflections about them. They should be completed away from the primary school setting, so it's not taking away from time in the internship or practicum. So what are 3 to 4 experiences that were really important? Maybe it was a negative experience. Maybe it was something that you don't want to do. Or what great things did you see in your internship? How did it really impact you? How do you know it's going to impact your professional work moving forward? I love to read these, and I think that people find that it's a useful exercise to kind of distill what you got out of the experience. The supervisor will fill out an evaluation form about each of the interns. It'll be completed after you complete your last internship day. They'll send it to you. You'll upload it to Blackboard, so it's not some kind of anonymous evaluation. It's a significant factor in your grade in that you need to get satisfactory in the majority of the categories, but you should definitely not expect a perfect score. In fact, in the video that I sent to supervisors, I encourage them not to go through the evaluation form and just give you exemplary for every single category. I want you to know where you can work, and where you can grow. We all have areas where we can grow in our professional practice. So I encourage them to not just give you excellent for the entire thing, even if you are an excellent intern. You'll complete this alongside your supervising librarian, and like I said, you'll post it in Blackboard under assignments. Some things to remember to be prepared for your internship. You want to maximize the time that you're working with students and teachers and your supervising school librarian by reading, researching, planning, and working on projects at home when possible. Arrive each day prepared for your practicum with an ongoing and updated to-do list that reflects collaboration with your supervising school librarian. That's a simple thing to do, to have a list of tasks you want to get done, but it'll keep you on task and getting things done, and again, maximizing that time. Always dress professionally, always be on time, and don't arrive too early. I know that seems, being early is always a good thing, but really early might kind of cut into time that the supervisor wanted to have for themselves to get prepared to host you. So just be thinking about that. Okay, in addition to your 5 days, everybody's going to do one additional visit to a school library with a different school librarian. So you're going to have your supervising school librarian help you select an additional school library program, or if you already know of one and you have a contact that you can use, that's great too. Needs to be at a different level, but it can be from a different district. So for example, if your internship is at the primary level, so that means elementary school, then your additional day should be either a middle school or a high school. If your primary site is at a middle school or high school, your additional day should be at an elementary school. Again, elementary libraries, secondary libraries, middle and high, work really, really differently. And it's important that you get both of those experiences because your certification is in K-12. And while you might have an idea in your head about the level you want to work at, the job that's available might be at a different level. So it's really important. The only restrictions on this is that you need to do that additional day in a school where we have an MOU or a memorandum of understanding with the school district. Now, if you're doing it in the same district that you're doing your placement in, that means we have an MOU. If you're doing it in a district where another classmate is doing an internship, we have an MOU. If you have any questions about whether or not your district has an MOU, send me an email. I've got a list and I can check it. Updates all the time, so I don't put it in Blackboard. They expire, they get renewed, we get new ones, etc. But check with me. But again, if you're doing it in the same district where you're doing your placement, you don't have to worry about it. The school library that you're doing this additional day in should not be a school library at the school that you work in if you're a classroom teacher. That's important. And something else to know about this one is that if it's difficult to get out of school for an entire 8 hours or a whole day, you can also do your one additional day in 2 4-hour increments, if that helps you. You can't do that for the 5 days. The 5 days should be whole school days, full work days. But for your additional day, if you want to go 2 times for 4-hour periods, you might, again, maximize experiences you get to see, things you get to observe, but no less than that. So you can't go for 1 hour one day and 4 hours the next day, etc. It needs to be 2 4-hour increments. When you do additional site visits and observations, talk with the librarian about their program. Be prepared with questions about procedures that interest you, scheduling classes, when they plan, how they plan, what collaboration with classroom teachers looks like, how their budget looks, how they manage a budget, how they collect data, the kinds of data they collect, do they seek grants, what's been successful, etc. Really important to be sensitive to their schedules. Do they prefer you do 2 4-hour visits or 1 full day? When you schedule your visit, have those start and end times in mind, and always send a thank you note or an email after the. Okay, practicum hours checklists are due in Blackboard by Sunday, April 26th. Again, this gives me enough time where if there are issues with your checklist, I'm able to address them with you and get you to turn things in so that graduation is not impacted. You should take a look at this document and I'll show you where it is in Blackboard. This is a checklist of all the activities that you've completed for the internship, and it lets me know what activities you chose to do to get to 120 hours, which is the minimum. There is a mixture of required activities, so things that everybody must do, and suggested activities that are kind of a menu of options that you can choose from to get to 120. I'm going to show you those in a little bit. Hours come from required and suggested activities, and if you need additional hours or if you have suggestions or there's something that you're gonna really wanting to work on that you think might count, let me know and we can talk about it. There are a couple of things that are required. Everybody has to do some kind of collaborative teaching. And there are a few options for this. So for example, in 742, an option for your CUP or collaborative unit plan was to teach a lesson with a classroom teacher. If you did that, you should have filled out a document that the classroom teacher signed, and you get 4 hours and you've completed your requirement. If you didn't get to do that during 742 and you're going to develop a different collaborative lesson plan, which can be with either a classroom teacher where you work or at your internship site, and you're going to co-teach that to students with a teacher, then you can count that for 8 hours to develop a lesson plan and teach it. So you have some options, but you have to do teaching in this class. And it needs to be something that you co-plan with a teacher. So it's not just like you read a story during the regular library time. You need to actually think through a lesson that you've talked about with a teacher to like kind of incorporate what they're working on in the classroom and what's going on in the library. Talk to your supervisor if you're worried about this. It's likely that they're doing something like that or that they will have some ideas for an opportunity. An option for a suggested activity is to visit a totally different type of library and observe a librarian. So for example, you could visit a public library and observe or meet with a children's or YA librarian for up to 2 hours. If you're a high school librarian or an aspiring high school librarian, you might like to visit an academic library and observe and meet with an academic librarian, kind of learn how some of the things that your students in high school are learning translate to their undergraduate experience. Again, be professional, contact the librarian via email ahead of time. Don't just show up at a library, please. Explain why you'd like to meet with them and observe them and schedule it based on a time that works for them and when something's happening in the library potentially. You can also attend additional conferences and webinars up to 16 hours. So for example, if you attended 1 day of a conference for the requirement, but you're going to be going to SCASL again in March, you can also count additional hours up to 16 hours. So like 2 additional days of conference attendance. If you're going to view more webinars, which you can do, you can't do more than 6 hours of webinars. So you can't do 16 hours of webinars. You can do 6 hours. Okay, for those of you who are graduating, you might have questions about certification. I have a folder in Blackboard with information about praxis and certification and things you need to know. But just so you know that I am not a person to ask certification questions to, that would be Lauren Sanborn, who's in the College of Ed, and she can answer any questions you have about certification or it's actually a number that you should write down, an email address you should write down for after you graduate, if anything goes on with your certification, you need a little bit of guidance. I always have students contacting me after they've graduated and they've got a question about their certification, and I'm always just going to direct you to Lauren Sanborn, so that's a good person to know. Portfolios are a requirement of graduation from our master's program, but you're going to be turning portfolios into me and doing them as part of this class because ISI school library portfolios are all graded by me. So important thing to do is that you've saving assignments, because you're going to be using those as artifacts for the learning objectives in your portfolio, I'm going to be opening up a really detailed lecture in early February where I tell you everything you need to know about your portfolio and exactly what's supposed to be in it. You'll have no questions about what you need to do for your portfolio. I'm just not posting that just yet because I don't want to overwhelm you with information, especially information you don't need right now. You don't need to start working on the portfolio. In fact, if you're in 720, you can't, because you're going to use an assignment from 720 for the portfolio. You're going to be submitting your portfolios to me in Blackboard, which is, different than other students. But actually this slide is a little out of date because I say if you choose to use another platform, but actually nobody's using Blackboard anymore. You're going to be using something like Google Sites or some other kind of website. In fact, Google Sites is the best way to do a portfolio, but I will be talking about all of that in that portfolio lecture that I plan to open up, I think, like the first week in February. And then you'll have lots more information about what's required of the portfolio. These are due April 15th for everybody across the entire university who's doing graduate school portfolios. That date is really not flexible unless you have a very extenuating circumstance. And it's only if you're graduating. So if this is your first internship and you're doing another one in the fall, don't worry about the portfolio. It's just not on your plate this semester. That's just only something you do in the semester you're graduating. Okay, initial licensure students who are completing your second internship, you should see an earlier slide regarding some different discussion board forum requirements. Don't recycle work from the previous internship, such as conferences or public library visits, etc. You'll want to visit different conferences and different libraries. The only thing you can count towards both are the assignments that you completed in required hours. So you'll notice that there's like assignments from 742, 720, etc. that are required. You don't complete those assignments again. Those count for both semesters, but everything else is different. You do a different 5 days. You do it a different additional day. And there's 2 different checklists. I'll show those to you when we're in Blackboard also, because there's some things that you only do once, like you only do the blog assignment in your first semester, for example. Okay. Some key thoughts this semester. Be flexible. Situations are fluid in schools and districts and personal lives. Plans change. Be prepared to regroup. Don't get so in your head about having to do these dates right away or the dates that you think you're going to. Things might change. Be patient with your supervisor and classroom teachers. It can be challenging to be an educator right now. It can be stressful. There's a lot on their plate. And so it's important to be patient with them, give them grace, and do what you can to make it a positive experience. And avoid being stressed about things that are beyond your control, like illnesses or issues that keep you from doing the internship on the days that you thought you were going to. Just be flexible. And no, I always tell students, and I hope you take this to heart, if you do the work required for this course, you're going to be successful in completing the internship. I always make sure everybody graduates. If there's something that I feel like isn't satisfactory work, I give you a chance to redo it. I tell you exactly what you need to do to redo it. So please don't stress about this class. It can feel like there's a lot. You're kind of working at your own pace. There's a lot of things to do. It's hard to get out of your jobs to do these days. It can be a stressful time. You've got your other class. There's all these requirements for graduation and the praxis and this and that. But you are going to graduate and you are going to complete this internship and receive your certification. Okay, next steps. You should use the time before the start of your internship to familiarize yourself with everything provided on our course site. Review all the documents and timelines before your first meeting with your supervising librarian and post questions in Blackboard if you think they're for the good of the course. At this point, I'm going to show you our Blackboard course. Okay, I want to give you a little tour of our Blackboard site. A note about this, I'm not going to go into the student view because I haven't made everything available and you won't be able to see everything. This is my instructor view, so there are things here that you might not see that I'll open up as the course goes on, but for the most part, this should look kind of similar. The first thing is this course participation quiz. Everybody has to do at the beginning of the semester. It's a federal requirement for student loans. You just kind of click that you're in the class. Information here about me and the course. Under this syllabus, practicum guidelines, and other documents area is where you'll find our syllabus, practicum guidelines, practicum dates form. This is a sample timeline. I had a screen grab of that in the slides. And a couple of really important documents here: the practicum hours checklist for the first semester and the practicum hours checklist for the second semester. Please use the practicum hours checklist for the first semester if you are in your first internship or if you're an advanced certification student, and use this other one if you're in your second internship. Most people will be using this one. I want to show you this document. You'll notice this is just kind of a menu, a table, if you will, of things that you can do that should equal 120 hours or more. The way this is formatted is that the activity is on the left. This column indicates whether or not it's required, meaning you must do it, or suggested, meaning it's an option. The number of hours maximum that you can count for that activity. And then the right-hand column, very important, this is the artifacts or the documentation required for each activity. For example, for your 5 full internship days, everybody must do them. It's required. It will be 40 hours, 5 days, 8 hours. And you'll be listing the dates below that you attended, okay, along with the final reflection, but that's not on here. The 8 hours you spend at a school library that is different from the grade level is required for 8 hours, and you're going to list the date below and complete the required discussion board forum post, okay? Everybody will complete that discussion board forum post, and you'll see that in Blackboard. These are those key assessments. Key assessments were designed to have some kind of a hands-on component, like working with a real school's website or a real librarian or a teacher for your collaborative unit plan, for example. So we count those as internship hours for 8 hours. No documentation required, okay? Passing grades on key assessments are required to pass the courses, so I don't need to see the assignments. They've already been graded and passed by your instructors. And these, they're there. They count for 32 hours, but you don't need to provide anything. Attend a professional conference, submit a post in Blackboard, create a blog, submit the blog link, etc., etc. So go through this and you'll see. And then once we get down to suggested, you'll choose which hours you want to do, but eventually they need to add up to 120. You're going to make a copy of this document, mark it up however you want, but so it's clear to me what you're doing, and then total the hours here. It should be 120 or more. This is the very last thing I grade. So you can turn that in whenever you're done with it, whenever you've done all the hours. But I'm not going to grade it till the very end of the class. That's because what I do, the very last thing I do before I assign pass fail in this course is I go through the practicum hours checklist, and for everything that you've counted as an activity you did for internship, I go back and check the documentation to make sure you did the required documentation to prove to me that you did the activity. So I can't do that until all the activity documentation is in, and it's just easier for me if I do them all at the end. So, don't turn this in March and then start hounding me via email about why I haven't graded it. It's not going to get graded till April. That's when I do everybody's practicum hours checklist. What you can do is be constantly monitoring gradebook to make sure you've got passing scores on your assignments. This is the supervisor evaluation form. I also sent that to all the supervisors. This is the form for collaborative teaching if you need that. That same form was given to you in 742. Blog, assignment description, and these are just some extra things here. For example, this is that textbook code if you want to order it. These are interview questions. I just want to point this out because a lot of you will be on the job market and interviewing this semester. This is kind of a crowdsourced list of interview questions that students in my classes in the past have received. Sometimes you receive the questions, or maybe after their interview, they jotted down what they were asked and then they included them on this document. It's a way to prepare for your job interview. And if you have one and you get some new questions, feel free to add it. This is an editable document and I think it's helpful. This is that questions discussion board forum. It's empty right now. I'm going to click on it so you can see. Post any questions you have about the course. I have followed it. You'll click on this to follow it. And so if you post a question here, I'll get an email. It tells me a question's been posted and I'll try to get a response up here, right away. So that's the questions discussion board forum. Introductions. I'm going to have you do an introduction infographic. You can do an Adobe identity graphic. There's a couple of options. You could also use Canva. You're going to post that here to a discussion board forum so that we can all learn a little bit about one another by January 25th. Under assignments is where you're going to see all the submission links, okay? You'll notice I didn't put due dates on many of these. These do have due dates because those all have to be in by a certain date. But for example, like the final reflection, the evaluation, you're going to be turning those in as you get them done. This is where you're going to submit them. Make sure you have something submitted for all the required areas, and then all the suggested activity links are in here. So if you do a public library visit, you're going to submit it here. I hope this makes sense. There's just a lot going on in internship, and everybody's doing something different, so it's hard to streamline it, but I just want you to know that all the links to submit things, when the practicum hours checklist says submit a document in Blackboard, that's where you're going to do it. Okay. Orientation lecture, that's what you're watching now, so hopefully you found it, and then the copy of the slides is in there too. This is the portfolio information. Like I said, I'm going to release this later in the semester. It will have the lecture slides, and some other materials for the portfolio. I'm going to update a few of these things. That's why I'm not going to just go ahead and release them, but they will be shortly. This is that folder that I mentioned with certification and praxis information. There's final semester information for library media specialist certification. There is information about the praxis. Everybody's got to get the praxis taken this semester. And there are some certification questions. That's a contact information there for Lauren Sanborn if you have other questions. Here are some webinars. These up here are ones that we've hosted in the iSchool, and I think we're planning to host another one this spring. I'll keep you apprised of that. They're hour-long webinars that you could use for to count towards webinar hours, but I also linked just a few other places to go for them if you're looking for more. And then the last thing is the Zoom link for virtual meetings. If you click on that, it's going to open up a Zoom room. I'm happy to meet with you throughout the semester. Just, shoot me an email. We'll find a time that works. I know that you have, jobs during the day, and sometimes you need to meet at night or at weird times or your lunch break or whatever. We'll find something that works. And if you'll just go to this Zoom link here for any meetings with me. So that's what's available to you in Blackboard. Do let me know if you have any questions. Let me just point out also that there are some discussions here. And then I'll be adding those discussions for, the second library visit and things like that. Okay, please post any questions you have in Blackboard. I can answer them for everybody, or email me or text me personally if it's something that only applies to you. I'm here to support you this semester and connect you with whatever you need to get graduated, get certified. I'm here to support and help, so please do let me know what I can do. Otherwise, I look forward to a great semester together.